Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inner Conquest, the world's greatest modern metaphysics channel. I'm your host, Jacob Edens, and today we're going to be talking about the process and protocol for essentially syncing up with more conscious power. So when you think about the process for gaining spiritual attributes, it's about understanding first what could be summarized as the law of reversibility, right? So when you have normal physical linear action, right, where it's like, hey, do these things to get this thing, and then you'll become this person, right? Law of reversibility applies to spiritual concepts across the board because a lot of it is just inverting the way that we have engaged with reality, right? So if I want SP to make me feel a certain way, right? Normal thought process is go take a bunch of action, try to get SP, and then once you have it, then you feel that way, right? Law of reversibility is essentially cultivate that feeling state, play imaginative scenes from the end, and then invert that process and allow that process to be installed, if you will, internally, and then have it reflected externally after doing that type of work, right? So law of reversibility is basically just inverting reality from having to go and get things to being and acting as if, and then allowing for reflections to take place. So when you begin to think, act, and operate this way, what you want to be aware of, right, is that the mirror or the five senses that you have external will not be your friend, right? Because if you try to occupy a new state, or you occupy a new state that is something that you haven't occupied before, then the reflection, right, there's that lag time that hasn't caught up to that yet. So it's important to understand the primary principle of being the operant power, right? Because what you want to do, and really once you start to go down the personal empowerment path, what that has is a lot of personal responsibility that you have to adopt, right? Because if you have a dynamic with somebody that's not working, or you have a circumstance in your life that isn't the way you want it to be, the liberating factor, but also the pain point, if you will, is that you're causing it, right? And a lot of times what happens is we offload the responsibility of the situation to a chronically negative state that is something that we actually get enjoyment from occupying, right? So it feels good to bitch and complain about things, right? It feels good to get angry and do all these things. So from a base operational level, there's nothing wrong with that initially, right? Like if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're like, fuck off, right? You get really upset. That's fine, right? But the way you want to navigate that is to understand that that's a reflection of that old self. When you get triggered and angry, you use that anger as a clearing mechanism to clear all of the energy and consciousness, but then you have to rebuild, right? You have to take responsibility that, hey, if I let that angry, then I am essentially letting that permeate the end state of the consciousness that I will see reflected yet again, right? So by going and revising things after you have these negative occurrences, what will happen is in the beginning, you'll start to feel like nothing's really happening and you're not getting a payoff, right? That's the mechanism of your mind that is still dependent on external validation, right? So when you look at operant power type of thinking, it's you're the cause of everything, right? Whether you can accept that or not, you're the cause of everything through the states that you occupy. So if you occupy and dwell in a chronic state of not having what you want, then the mirror, i.e. 3D reality, must reflect that you don't have what you want, right? So a lot of times it's a weaning process off of that, you could call it an addiction to that old state of consciousness, because the only thing we really get addicted to are states of consciousness, right? Like think about if you have ever been addicted to something, right? Like you want a cigarette, or you want to, do something that, maybe your logical mind doesn't want to do, but your emotional body kind of craves, right? It's that state of consciousness that you become so familiar with and identified with that you naturally gravitate towards it. So once you understand that, you don't really fight with things as much anymore. You choose differently, right? Because if you're an operant power, right, and you've accepted the responsibility of operant power, that means that whatever you're choosing is what is being reflected. So when you have something that's like in your face or a circumstance that isn't good, and it's like trying to suck all the emotion out of you so that it can stay alive, because through your awareness, you create reality, you start to not care as much about it, right? Because remember, indifference is what cuts, and feeling is the tie that binds. So if you have something that you really like and you feel into it, right? That's Neville Goddard 101. You feel into the state of the wish fulfilled. You're binding yourself to the state, which then expresses itself on the screen of space, right? So if you have the desire to be wealthy, if you walk around feeling wealthy all day, but you're moving from a point of what you would call poverty, right? You're never really poor because there's infinite air, right? There's abundance all around you. Your cells regenerate every single day, right? You have massive amounts of wealth in terms of cosmic sunlight, right? But say you're going from one dynamic that revolves around money to another one of abundance, right? And you start saying, I'm abundant, right? But you came from this state that's chronically been rehearsed and dwelt in for a long time. That state is going to expect emotional feeding from you. So by detaching yourself from that state, it's going to keep coming like this, right? It's going to keep getting you. It's going to put a bunch of stuff in your third dimensional reality. And the whole goal, right, is to get you to accept that this is reality. Because the key point of an operant power is accepting or denying a reality as true or false, right? So you have basic universal truths, which come down to things like, how unconditional love powers everything. You can't have unlimited freedom with a judgment, right? There's like a lot of different things that are baseline reality foundations. You're an eternal soul. You have a unique identity that cannot be taken away from you. You're eternal, right? These different core truths that you have. But within the realm of being a human, you have all of these different states that your consciousness can adopt and occupy. The most simple being one of health or not health, right? It's broken down to a core essence of wanted or unwanted. So you're either in a wanted state or an unwanted state. And the way that I think is the best way to view it is if you're in an unwanted state, it's good because now you know what a wanted state is, right? So everything serves you when you look through that lens of, oh, this is good, this is not wanted. Now you get to reorient back to who you decide to be, right? Because the only law of the universe and the only God, if you want one, is the God of I am what I am aware of being now, right? That's the pearl of great price. So when you put the pearl of great price into practice, what that means is that you have to sacrifice all other second causes, right? The pearl of great price, the story summarized is the man was looking for something so valuable that it could buy anything else, right? And he was willing to sell every other pearl for the one pearl that was so valuable that it could buy anything else, right? So in order to have the pearl of great price, you have to sell every other thing. What that means is that you have to alleviate second causes, right? You have to find what is the actual causation of all things. And the causation of all things is who you are being, right? Who you say you are, who you choose to be. I am this. You are that now, right? Because if you look at the extrapolated dimensional reality that we live in, right? There's your awareness, there's your mind in the middle, and then there's an external reality. Your awareness focuses on the fourth dimensional reality, your mind, and then the more you focus on something, it pulls you towards a physical reality that is a reflection of that, right? So when you say, I am this, I am healthy, right? You focus your awareness, you marry those two things together, you are that, right? Because you've initiated the causal point of being that. So when you have faith, what that means is that initiating the causal point between your I am awareness and your mind is the genesis of creation, right? Your external is the reflection, right? That comes third to those two primary initiators. So when you have faith, that's loyalty to an unseen reality, basically meaning that once that merging has happened and you've saturated your consciousness enough to identify your I amness with a self-concept, right? I am healthy, married together, merged together, right? You know how you've identified with something as if there's no space in between it. So when you say, hi, Kevin, and my name's Jacob, I don't react to Kevin. I identify and am Jacob Edens, right? So that marriage has been crystallized. Whenever you have something that is not reflecting the way that you want, it's because that I amness and that mind haven't been merged into the ideal. So when you look at the principal ideation behind Christ in the Bible, Christ, defined by Neville Goddard, is your wonderful human imagination, which would be that fourth dimensional mindscape, right? That can be your ideal. If you're in prison, you can play an image of you getting out of prison, right? So when you have that, what will happen is right, you have your I amness, which never changes. It's always you, your unique soul identity, right? You have a mental image of you being free, and then you have an external reality of you in prison, right? That is summarized by the story of Isaac, Esau, and Jacob. It's also my father, Christ, and John the Baptist. We can use John the Baptist for this one. John the Baptist is categorized as hairy, just like Esau is in the Bible. What that means is a tactile, third-dimensional world. Christ, or Jacob, is your fourth-dimensional mindscape reality, categorized as a smooth-skinned boy, as Jacob is in the Isaac-Esau story. So what you have is you always have a choice point between validating reality, because your I amness, the Father, is the decider of who gets the birthright or who is resurrected, right? So when you choose your ideal as identification with I am, that begins the genesis process of becoming that which you want to be. If you take your I amness and you look at John the Baptist, or you look at Esau, which is your external world, and you marry your I amness to this external world, well, now you're a slave, because the external world is always changing. And additionally, it doesn't have the creative power that the fourth dimensional reality does to create reality. It's a reflection, right? It doesn't have the first principle of causation. So understanding the first principle of causation is understanding that whatever you merge that I amness to and claim it with that fourth dimensional reality is the genesis point of what's going to be reflected in a third dimensional reality 100% of the time. So when you have faith, faith is loyalty to an unseen reality. It's loyalty to that genesis process, right? Of saying, I am this, I've claimed this, I'm dwelling in that state, I'm playing mental images from the end, I'm affirming as if it's mine now, I've locked in and cauterized that reality. This is the real reality. Everything else is moving and shifting. Now you've operated the law of reversibility in a way that is beneficial to you, that actually works, right? Because if you have to have something outside of you to embody a state, now that's a premise that is akin to leaving the land of many gods of Egypt, right? You have to pray to the God of health. You have to pray to the God of wealth. You have to do all these things externally so that you can be what you decide you are. But you can always be who you want to be right now through the law of your awareness, right? Whatever your awareness is on, you are that once accepted and merged with from an identity standpoint. So I hope that helps you guys understand with a little bit more of a deep dive of the law of reversibility, how you embody states, how to not get sucked into old states of consciousness, and just some basic framework operation for how the universe works. So if you guys are interested in working with me, click the link tree for the coaching. On top of that, leave comments down below, stuff that you want to see. And the most important thing is go conquer. I'll see you in the next one.